So it looks like GPD was able to knock it out of the park again with the Win Mini. They were able to slam a Phoenix Point APU into this tiny handheld, and it performs really, really well. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we've got a really exciting video because we get to take a first look at the brand new GPD Win Mini. Now this is a handheld that I've been looking forward to, and I'm a huge fan of the GPD line of handhelds, especially the new 7000 series handhelds. And one of my favorites right now is the 2023 Win Max 2, but for a lot of people, you know, it's a bit on the bulky side. It's got an 11.1 inch screen, definitely puts down some good performance, but I think that the Win Mini can definitely solve a lot of those size issues when it comes to these handhelds. So right off the bat, first thing everybody's going to notice is this built-in keyboard. And yeah, I mean, we've got a full QWERTY keyboard. It is backlit. We've also got a trackpad and our built-in gamepad. With this, they basically took what was great about the Win Max 2 and kind of sized it down. It's got a 7-inch 120Hz display, which looks absolutely beautiful, maximum brightness of 500 nits, and for the APU, this is actually using a Ryzen 7 7840U. I personally love the form factor here. It's actually really comfortable to hang on to, and we can definitely expect some great performance out of this given that we have those RDNA 3 graphics, just like in its big brother, the new 2023 Win Max 2. And speaking of that one, here's a quick size comparison. As you can see, they've really scaled this down. Like I mentioned, the bigger one does have an 11.1 inch display. This is coming in with that 7-inch 120Hz display. And remember, when it comes to GPD's 7000 series powered handhelds, we've got 3 now at the time of making this video. We've got the Win 4, the GPD Win Max 2, and now the Win Mini. With this new handheld, GPD is also going to be introducing some dedicated grips. Now these are going to be sold separately. I think it's around $30 for these. And they attach to the bottom of the Win Mini, just to give you a little extra to hang on to. I like the way they're designed, and once they're in place, actually makes for a really nice feeling handheld. So basically, they're going to attach here with 2 screws, and we'll go with the other side here. Without them, looks a little something like this. Kind of plain Jane. You can see we've got that flat bottom to work with. But once they're installed, we've got those extra palm rests to work with. And the dedicated grips will be sold separately, but inside of the box with the GPD Mini, we get a 65-watt charger, a USB Type-C charging cable, we also get a lanyard, and obviously the Mini itself. I think they've come up with a really nice size ratio when it comes to the Mini. Now while holding the unit, I can actually access all of the buttons. I can even type on that QWERTY keyboard. I can access the trackpad without having to remove any of my hands from the unit. When it comes to the built-in controller, we do have Hall-based analog sticks, and the D-pad here is the same one found in the PS Vita. Actually, really nice, but it does have those dome switches, so if you didn't like that, then you won't like this one because it's the same thing. And yes, these analog sticks do have L3 and R3 built in, so you can press down on them. Buttons A, B, X, Y, using dome switches, same thing in the Vita. Personally, really like the setup they have here. Around back, we've got Hall sensor-based analog triggers, and they do have some decent throw. I actually didn't think we'd have this much, given that we have such a small handheld here. And of course, the built-in QWERTY keyboard. It is backlit, and it's going to rely on dome switches to keep that size down, but it feels really good. I actually enjoy using this one. And we've also got some programmable buttons up here. We've got L4 and R4. We can program these from software. And again, these analog sticks do support L3 and R3. One thing I thought was pretty cool is they do have a lanyard attachment right here, and this is such a small form factor unit that, you know, adding a lanyard to it could definitely help out, but they've also added some rubber strips on each side to help you kind of hang on to the unit. I thought this was pretty cool. And of course, when it comes to I/O, everything's going to be around back here. Now, they did add an OCULINK port to this. They kind of substituted a full-size HDMI for OCULINK, which I'm totally fine with. That way we can connect an eGPU and get some really great performance. I will be testing out the GPD G1 eGPU with this in a future video, so stay tuned to the channel. But if you're not familiar with OCULINK, basically it'll run it up to 64 gigs a second as opposed to Thunderbolt or USB 4's 40. So yeah, we can get much better eGPU performance out of it. Right underneath that, we've got a micro SD card slot, a 3.5mm audio jack. We've got our mode switch button, so we can turn those built-in controls into either a mouse or a controller. And we've got one USB 3.2 port and one USB 4.0 port, which does support 40 gig protocol. And of course, when it comes to the specs, they're actually going to be offering two different models, but the one I have here has the AMD Ryzen 7 7840U. They're also going to be offering the 7640U, but both of these are based on Zen 4. With this, we get 8 cores, 16 threads, base clock of 3.3 GHz, and a boost up to 5.1. Since it's a Phoenix Point APU, we've got that Radeon 780M iGPU based on RDNA 3, 12 compute units, and it'll run it up to 2700 MHz. You can pick this up with either 16 or 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X RAM, running it up to 7500 megatransfers per second. It's got that beautiful 7-inch 120Hz LTPS display. Now, unfortunately, it does not support FreeSync, but it is 1920 by 1080, 314 pixels per inch, and a max brightness of 500 nits. Storage is going to be handled by a 2230 PCIe 4.0 M.2 NVMe SSD. This one here happens to have 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 2 terabyte drive pre-installed from the factory. We've got a 44.24 watt-hour battery, and we're running Windows 11. But of course, since we're working with an x86 platform, installing Linux is quite easy, and it does fully support it. A couple other notable things here. This does have linear rumble motors built in on the Z-axis. The micro SD card reader here is SD 3.0, so it can read it up to 160 megabytes per second and write at 120. And finally, it's got a 3-axis gravity sensor and a 3-axis gyroscope built in. So when GPD first announced this handheld, I was a bit skeptical about the form factor, but after using it for a couple days, I'm actually really liking it. Trackpad is awesome, and I can hold this in obviously handheld mode and reach the middle of the keyboard itself and the trackpad. I can go ahead and type through, go to my favorite web pages, and of course, if you've got smaller hands, it might be a bit harder to reach into the middle here, but it's not a huge handheld at all, and we do have multi-gestures here with this trackpad, and I can definitely see myself carrying this around quite a bit, and I could use it for work if I need to, but one of the main claim to fame here is this is a little gaming handheld. And that 120Hz display looks amazing. You can run your favorite indie games up to 120 here. We've got Shredder's Revenge, and you can see that this APU isn't pulling much. In fact, out of the box, the maximum TDP on this is 18 watts, but you can go into the BIOS, you can use a third-party application to up that if you want to. But with this game here, which I admit is not a hard game to run at all, at 120Hz, we're only pulling 6 watts. Moving over to one of my favorites, we've got OG Skyrim, and I wanted to see if we could run this at 120 Hz, 18 watts. We're right under, but right now we're at 1080p medium settings. And dropping this down to low will net us a steady 120 across the board, but I'd say this is more than enough. It feels super smooth on this display, and it's very, very playable. Now, of course, we've seen this D-pad in the Vita, and I enjoy using it, but I still wanted to show you how it performs here. And while we're doing that, I figured we'd test out Street Fighter 6. Right now, we're at 18 watts, medium settings, and we're running at 60 FPS. These 7840U APUs do a great job with fighting games, Injustice 2, Mortal Kombat 11, and of course, we've got Street Fighter 6 here. Really liking this for the fighting games, and this D-pad works out really well. It's got some nice roll to it, kind of wish it was a bit deeper, but the way this is set up, you can definitely get used to using it and pulling off your favorite special moves. I also wanted to test out Horizon Zero Dawn. We're at 1080p low settings, and it's really not that bad. I'm using the built-in benchmark, and by the end of this, we actually had an average of 64 FPS. Of course, taking this down to 720p is going to net you much more, but I wanted to see what we could do at 1080, and this is playable. Forza Horizon 5 is an awesome game for these handhelds. It performs very well on a lot of these. Right now we're at 1080p low settings, 18 watts, and we could probably take this up to medium. I've got VSync locked, so we can kind of keep it right there with that steady 60. And as you can see, we're getting some great performance. I personally can't wait for Forza Motorsports 8 to release so I can test that one out. God of War has gotten a lot better on these APUs since launch, but it's still not perfect. At 18 watts, 720p low, we're right there under 60. We got an average of around 53 FPS. I mean, it's not horrible. Still feels pretty smooth here, but it would be nice to, run this at a steady 60. And the final game I wanted to test here on the iGPU was Cyberpunk 2077. 720p, low settings, and we're at a steady 60. I turned VSync on with this at the lower wattages. It definitely helps out. And we could run this at 1080, but we need to take the TDP up to around 24 watts. And right now I just wanted to leave it stock. I will be doing another video where we up this thing, but for most people out there, they won't even need to. So far, it looks like the Win Mini's performance is on par with other 7840U powered handhelds out there, but I also wanted to take a look at battery life. And what we've got on screen right now is just a little bit of TDP testing. I've got hardware info up, I've put a load on the CPU and the GPU, we're at a 10 watt TDP, and our total power draw from the battery at 10 watts is around 19 watts. So what we can do now is just kind of do a simple calculation with the capacity of the battery and the total wattage being pulled at different TDP levels. These tests were run with the screen brightness set at 100%, and at 10 watts, we got a total battery draw of around 19 watts. A little bit of calculation, we can get around 139 minutes of runtime out of it. And what I found through my testing is total power draw here is very similar to the Steam Deck, because at 15 watts, we draw a total of 27 watts from the battery, giving us around 98 minutes of runtime. And finally, I ran this at 18 watts. Total power draw jumps up to 31 watts from the battery, giving us an estimated runtime of 85 minutes. Now keep in mind, this is estimated runtime. Through all of my testing, it usually comes out, real world runtime, lower than these estimates here, but this kind of gives us a good idea. First impressions here with the Win Mini, really like it. Love having that built-in keyboard. I think it's the perfect size. We've got that 7-inch 120Hz display, which looks absolutely beautiful. Now, the one thing that's going to kind of hold this back when it comes to performance is, taking that TDP up. This is a much smaller handheld, so heat and battery constraints are going to be kind of an issue going over around 25 watts. But while in dock mode, I'd say 25 watts would be great, especially when it's connected to the GPD G1 OCULINK eGPU. You could turn this into a full-fledged gaming PC capable of running AAA games at 1440p, and I will have a video coming up soon, so definitely keep an eye on the channel. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look video. I really do like this handheld, and if there's anything else you want to see running on this, just let me know in the comments below. Obviously, we're going to do that eGPU video. We'll do some emulation testing at some lower TDPs, but if there's any other AAA games or operating systems you want to see tested on the Win Mini, just let me know in the comments below. And if you want to learn a little more or maybe pick one of these up, I believe they're going to be launching an Indiegogo soon for the Win Mini. I'll leave links to the official GPD website and the Indiegogo launch page. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Like always, thanks for watching.